Welcome to the Murfreesboro City Council. It's April 20th, 2017, and Vice Mayor Madeline Scales Harris had the prayer and the pledge, but I think you have some special guests that we can introduce. We have Troop 398 that meets at St. Mark's Methodist United Methodist Church, who is going to do our prayer and pledge tonight. Now, I've got the Scouts that are here. We have, for their merit badge, working on communications, we have Kyle Brown. Kyle, go ahead and stand up. Y'all can come on up to the podium. Brandon Poplin, David Hoffer, Dawson Lapp. Then Citizenship in the Nation, we have Will Mulligan. Did I say that right? I didn't. Tell me how I was supposed to say it, Will. Malusian, okay. Vincent Theus. Dawson Lapp. All right. And I'm missing one person. Tell us your name. Carrington, come on up. Yeah. All right. Who would like to do the prayer, and then we'll do the pledge. All right.
Please bow your heads and remove any non-religious headgear. Dear God, thank you for this amazing day and the beautiful weather you've given us the past couple of days, and I hope that we'll be able to get what needs to be done, and thank you for bringing us all together, and let's have a peaceful and a very outgoing meeting. In your name we pray, amen.
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 Follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Carrington, since we missed your name, will you tell us, maybe introduce who your Scoutmaster is? Go ahead, come up to the microphone there.
Okay. Well, our Scoutmaster is actually not here right now.
Okay.
His name is Mike Warren. But the Assistant Scoutmaster that is here with us, Mr. Joe Lapp, which is Dawson's father. So,
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, guys. Got a special introduction tonight, actually two special introductions. We were proud that recently Miss Desiree Thorpe was chosen as the Telecommunicator of the Year, and Desiree represents Murfreesboro. So I think you guys, Desiree, if you'd like to come up and Chief Dirk.
Good evening, everybody. Desiree Thorpe was selected as Telecommunicator of the Year, not only for the outstanding work that she does, along with many others in dispatch. It's a stressful job, and it's a difficult job, and they're there to make sure our first responders arrive there as needed, as called upon by the community. But what a lot of people don't know is that Desiree also devotes a lot of her time and efforts off-duty, and has really brought fire and police together with a lot of fundraising activities, which was the latest was the basketball game not too long ago where fire beat law enforcement. We'll just put that right out there. But we'll get them back in softball, though. So.
Desiree exemplifies our dispatchers and what they do for our community and getting our responses out there. And I call our dispatchers and our telecommunicators our first responders, because they're literally the first one that takes the call when someone's in need. And it's often people that are experiencing their worst day of their life, and they're on the phone trying to comfort them and taking them through whatever they're dealing with. And Desiree exemplifies that. She's a great dispatcher, and she has done a great job on the Relay for Life. She's been organizing a lot of the activities with Relay for Life, along with a couple other people in both of our departments, and she has done a lot to bring the camaraderie of our departments together, and I appreciate everything that she's done.
Desiree, I think we can speak on behalf of the council members. We appreciate what you do. If it weren't for our dispatchers and our telecommunicators, these individuals couldn't get to where they're going, and we couldn't get the help that we need to help our residents. So we appreciate you for what you do. Appreciate your family for sharing you with us. And hopefully you can sometime between now and next year teach the chief to be able to shoot a free throw. That'd be great. All right. All right. We have one more person that we want to recognize tonight. Thank you, Desiree. Skylar Harris, who's also with our police department, was recently on The Voice this year. So not only active in our police department, but represented Murfreesboro quite well. Saw the video; it was phenomenal, and was on The Voice on NBC. Did you get to meet Blake or Adam or any of those guys?
All four, they're nice.
All right. Well, we wanted to congratulate you. Thank you for representing Murfreesboro, and the mic's yours if you'd like to say anything. You can sing, you can speak, whatever you want to do.
If it's better, the council can turn their chairs around and you can.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm not going to sing, but I do want to say thank you for having me here today. I've been at this department now five and a half years. I was actually a dispatcher for 3 years and came to patrol, so it's been a great experience. And if you want to hear me sing, I'll be singing the national anthem for Police Memorial Day this year. So May 18th, upstairs on the plaza. Well, no, right here, right outside. Just then you can hear me. We'll do that way then.
And I think we have several other members of our law enforcement and also our fire department who are here supporting Desiree and Skylar. If you guys wouldn't mind standing up, I'd appreciate it. And I'm going to make you stand up in the back there. All right. Thank you all for coming. Thank y'all. And Chris back in the back played in the basketball tournament or the Police Against Fire, and actually Chris tore his ACL playing in that game. So, and I will say this: he was actually the best player on the court for the police department. And after he went down, it even went more downhill from there. So, Chris, thank you for what you do. Okay, you've got the consent agenda in front of you. You've got a few items on the consent agenda.
There's no questions. I'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Ms. Wright, if you'll call the roll.
Ms. Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll move into minutes. You have the April 6, 2017 regular meeting, the April 13, 2017 special meeting, and the April 13, 2017 regular meeting. Are there any additions or deletions to the minutes?
I'm hearing none, so I'll move for an approval.
Second.
Motion and second. Ms. Wright?
Ms. Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Second readings, amend Exhibit A of Ordinance 17011 regarding consent item 1A-B prior to second and final reading.
Mayor, I'll explain why there's an amendment needed. In the consent agenda, you approved an item for the Community Development Department, and that is rearranging their budget. And since we already had a budget amendment in process for community development, we just corrected the Exhibit A to accommodate this change. We don't have to go through this again later.
I'll move for approval. Second.
Motion second, Ms. Wright.
Ms. Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Consider for passage on second reading and final reading as amended Ordinance 17011, amending the 2016-17 budget, and this is our fourth amendment.
Move for approval.
Second. Motion and a second. Looks like we've got a co-second. Councilman Wade, Councilman Shacklet.
Ms. Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Moving to new business and conduct a public hearing and consider for approval a certificate of compliance for a retail liquor store for Lisa Ann Strickland at University Package Store, 2834 Middle Tennessee Boulevard. We'll have to hold a public hearing, and our rules for our public hearing, if you're speaking as an individual, if you'll come to the podium, if you'll state your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes speaking as an individual. If you're representing a group, you'll have 5 minutes. If you'll ask all questions to the council, at the end of the public hearing, we'll get any of those questions answered. All right, if you're wishing to speak for or against this approval or certificate of compliance, please come to the public or the podium. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll consider for passage the certificate of compliance.
Mayor, I will mention this location is an existing location. It's just changing owners and the name, I believe.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Ms. Scales Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Pursuant to Resolution 17R-PH 07, adopted by the City Council on March 16, 2017, will conduct a public hearing to consider, 1, the adoption of the plan of services for an annexation of 406.3 acres along Burnt Knob Road, Veterans Parkway, and Blackman Road. Number 2, the zoning of approximately 120.5 acres along Burnt Knob Road and Lyle McDonald Court to Park P District, approximately 116.9 acres in Highway Commercial CH District, approximately 3.6 acres and also approximately 3.6 acres. Number 3, zoning of approximately 79 acres along Veterans Parkway and Blackman Road to Highway Commercial CH District, approximately 70.5 acres, and Commercial Fringe CF District, approximately 8.5 acres, which have been proposed to be annexed to the City of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. City of Murfreesboro and Mr. Donald McDonald, applicants, 2017-501-403 and -404. Notice of the said public hearing was published in the April 3rd, 2017 issue of a local newspaper. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland, and please know that it was not my goal to create the longest agenda heading in the history of agenda headings by putting this before you today. Our first item today is, with regards to this property, is the annexation of the West Park property. And you'll see that we have included a number of additional parcels in this study. We could pull up the map on the screen. You'll see that the city-owned property is here and here, the majority of it north of 840 and 3.6 acres south of 840. When we got the annexation petition in from the city for the West Park property, we really thought that it was a good idea to think more globally with respect to this annexation. And knowing that we could seek out whether or not the adjacent property owners wanted to be included in this annexation, and knowing that state law prohibits us from requiring them to be annexed, that we could only annex them if we got written consent or a written petition from those property owners. So we contacted each of these individual property owners to see if they would be interested in the annexation. We also spoke with Chief Folks about the annexation of the State Route 840 right-of-way and the State Route 840 interchange. And you'll see that that whole swath of 840 is included in the annexation study and plan of services. Chief Folks really feels strongly about the city's annexing of interchanges and interstate rights-of-way to clear up any jurisdictional confusion there might be in response to emergency service calls. And as you know, with the fire department being first responders as well, many times they are the first responders actually on the scene ahead of ambulances. So getting this interchange in the city limits means that if there are any wrecks or other emergency calls on the interchange or the ramps, the city fire department will respond to those calls. There were 7 or 8 additional parcels that we included, 3 of which we have not received petitions. So I'm going to clear this and show you which properties that we have not received petitions for. That's the Hoover tract right here, the, I forget the gentleman's name, this tract here, and the Trantham property here. Those parcels have been excluded from from a map that I'm about to show you, but the parcel here, the Carter property, the Jayen property here, and the Horde property, which is both sides of Veterans Parkway, as well as the cemetery property, which is surrounded by the city limits, and the McDonald property here. All of those parcels we have received annexation petitions for, so we have included those in the revised study area. So I handed out maps to you before the meeting. I've got it on the screen as well. The dreaded 10-foot strip is back. I've included a map with a fairly lengthy 10-foot strip, but because we have not received annexation petitions from this property, or this property, it requires us to do some creative annexation boundary drawing. So what I propose is beginning here, taking a 10-foot strip along the eastern boundary line of Mr. McDonald's property down the northern property line, and then 10 feet of the 840 right-of-way, and then coming up here like so, and then leaving a 10-foot strip on the Blackman right-of-way right there to keep from surrounding the Trantham property. So this is the revised study area that we have proposed. Because we were working on this right up until today's meeting, we don't have a revised plan of services, so Mr. Ives or Mr. Tyndall may need to provide guidance with whether or not the motion needs to, whether or not, if you approve this, the motion needs to be made subject to the revisions to the plan of services. But we certainly will revise the plan of services. The plan of services does show that we can provide services to all the parcels that remain in the study area. Sewer isn't available to all the parcels at the moment. However, a gravity line is anticipated to be constructed to serve the park property, and that gravity line would be extended as a part of that project to the western border of the park property for future extension to the adjacent properties along Veterans Parkway. There's a actually 2 companion zoning requests, one for the city property and one for the McDonald property to the south of Interstate 840. And I'll go over those requests after the public hearing on the annexation and the vote on the plan of services and the annexation itself, which will follow the public hearing. I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding this annexation. And the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the annexation to the City Council unanimously.
Any questions?
How are we going to break this down in each individual parcel, or when you talk about this, you talk about one big piece, or?
Mr. LaLance, I think you'd be voting on the revised study area as shown on the new map that I have on the screen right now.
So including our park property, we're going to include that in with everything else?
Yes, sir.
Can we change that?
I'm sorry?
Can we change that?
In what respect?
Pull our park property out and vote on it separately?
Mr. Tyndall or Mr. Ives would need to address that.
Well, right now, Councilman LaLance, we're just talking about the plan of services, so it's we could pull it out and talk about it separately, but it is just a plan that states that we were able to serve this entire area. So
okay.
That's what's up on before council right now.
All right, thank you, Mr. Ballamy. We'll need to conduct a public hearing on the plan of services for an annexation of approximately 406.3 acres along Burnt Knob Road, Veterans Parkway, and Blackman Road. City of Murfreesboro is the applicant. Anyone wishing to speak for or against the plan of services for an annexation, please come to the podium.
Good evening. My name is Mark Nagorski. I live at 5703 Colchester Court, Murfreesboro, Tennessee. I represent the Berkshire Homeowners Association, which is directly adjacent or across the street on facing the Pendleton Boulevard there, that would be facing this project on West Lawn. We want to just reiterate our continued support to Mr. McDonald and what he is venturing to do with the property. We're in agreement with it. We support it. And two, we just wanted to bring out, we're hoping that it would be planned that any of the buildings that are built on that FC property, that it be that those buildings would have their storefronts facing the Berkshire as well as Mr. McDonald's property. Other than that, we're in full agreement with his design.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak for the plan of services and the annexation? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll consider for adoption Resolution 17R PS07, adopt a plan of services for 406.3 acres along Burnt Knob Road, Veterans Parkway, and Blackman Road, City of Murfreesboro applicant.
And Mayor McFarland, just to be clear about the acreage will change. We have not calculated the revised acreage.
Okay.
The acreage will change, as will the plan of services.
Will we have that back before second reading?
Well, there wouldn't be a second reading on the annexation, but there would be a second reading on the zoning. I guess I would look to Mr. Ives for guidance on.
Because the changes that are going to be occurring to the plan of services are, I think, fair to say, minuscule. I believe it would be appropriate to go ahead and approve that if that's council's will, subject to the revised plan of services being submitted and submitted to the city secretary for inclusion in the record.
And we can certainly provide that to the city council for your records at the next meeting when the zonings would be considered for second reading.
So moved to include staff comments.
Second. Motion is second. Ms. Wright, if you'll call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance. Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll now need to consider for adoption Resolution 17RA07 to annex approximately 406.3 acres along Burnt Knob Road, Veterans Parkway, and Blackman Road, and to incorporate the same within the corporate boundaries of the City of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. City of Murfreesboro applicant 2017-501. This is for the annexation. I assume we would need to have the same stipulation on.
Yes, the same condition can apply to this, that the final annexation map would be provided to council and to the city clerk for the official records.
So moved, subject staff comments.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll now need to consider for passage on first reading ordinance 17 OZ 07.1 to zone approximately 120.5 acres along Burnt Knob Road and Lyle McDonald Court as Park P District and Highway Commercial CH District simultaneous with annexation.
Yeah, Mayor, excuse me, we
gotta
do
do
need
the
to have a
public
second
hearing.
public hearing
Yeah,
on the zoning issues.
As I was reading that, I was looking.
Item D.
The
Item
same,
D, yeah.
I had already check marked item D, so we'll need to conduct a public hearing for the park property. Mr. Bomley?
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. This zoning is specifically for the city property. This is all one parcel, but it was separated by the construction of 840 a long time ago. As is well known, the city purchased this property recently for the development of the West Park. The area where the West Park would be developed is the area in blue, which is about 117 acres. It is proposed to be zoned P, which is aptly for Park District. So that is the proposed zoning for the park, and it would permit the development of the West Park by right. And the 3.6 acre remnant portion of that parcel, which is in the purple area south of 840, is proposed to be zoned CH, Highway Commercial District, simultaneous with annexation. And you can see the boundary line bisects the 840 right-of-way as our zoning ordinance prescribes it to do. I've got a revised map in front of you as well to accommodate the 10-foot strip that would be left out, consistent with the annexation of the property that was just approved, because we can't zone something that's not in our jurisdiction. So, as I mentioned, the area in blue proposed to be zoned P. The area in purple proposed to be zoned commercial highway. The area south that's proposed to be zoned commercial highway is directly adjacent to a number of parcels that are already zoned commercial highway, and the city does not intend to develop that as a part of the park property, and felt that because of the adjacent zoning of the property that is zoned CH and has been zoned CH for about 3 or 4 years, that it would be appropriate to zone that 3.6 acres CH as well. The subject property is shown in the 2035 land use plan to be developed as the property north of 840 to be developed as business park. However, that was before the contemplation and purchase of this property for use as a large-scale park facility. The general development plan for the Blackman community, however, recommends mixed use for the subject property, which it describes as retail, office, civic, institutional, and high-density residential. And the plan supports the potential for institutional facilities, and a city facility is an institutional facility. So it is generally generally consistent with the Blackman land use plan. And one thing that I did want to mention is that because of the number of studies that we have going on right now that have recently been adopted, and because of the number of plans that have been submitted of late, the design guidelines was temporarily put on hold, but we do anticipate the design guidelines being brought back up in the very near future and brought to the Planning Commission and to the City Council. We anticipate that some of those design guidelines will be kind of an advisory guide for developers, while other portions of the design guidelines will be regulatory in nature. And those design guidelines would be citywide if adopted and would capture this property. One thing that I also wanted to mention that the City Council will have before it on May the 18th is a zoning ordinance amendment that removes warehousing and distribution as permitted uses in the commercial highway zoning district. So the Planning Commission has recommended approval of that zoning ordinance amendment, and if that passes, those uses would not be permitted uses in the commercial highway zone. With that being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions regarding this zoning request for the city property before or after the public hearing.
Any questions for Mr. Blomley? Okay, we'll need to conduct the public hearing to consider zoning approximately 120.5 acres along Burnt Knob Road and Lyle McDonald Court as Park P District and Highway Commercial CH District simultaneous with annexation. City of Murfreesboro applicant 2017-403. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. We'll consider for passage on first reading. Ordinance 17OZ07.1 is on approximately 120.5 acres along Burnt Knob Road and Lyle McDonald Court as Park P District and Highway Commercial CH District simultaneous with annexation 2017-403.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright?
Ms. Gale-Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Conduct a public hearing to consider zoning approximately 79 acres along Veterans Parkway and Blackman Road as Highway Commercial CH District and Commercial Fringe CF District simultaneous with annexation. Mr. Donald McDonald, applicant 2017-404. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. This is the last piece to this overall item number 5 on the agenda. This is the McDonald property, and when we got the West Park property, when we got the annexation petition for the West Park property, the other large parcel that was really going to be almost encircled by the city limits was the Donald McDonald property here along the east side of Veterans Parkway. We made contact with Mr. McDonald regarding annexation. We sat down with him and discussed zoning options for his property, and he has submitted an application to zone the majority of his property to CH, Commercial Highway District. The area directly along the west side of Blackman Road that you'll see in purple is an area that he is proposing to zone CF. And that is this area right here. And that is directly across the street from the Berkshire subdivision, and he's doing that in an effort to be sensitive to the adjacent subdivision, and I believe that's what Mr. Nagorski was referencing when he spoke earlier. I think he was speaking primarily about the McDonald property here before us right now. Mr. McDonald also owns this property, which was annexed and zoned commercial highway and commercial fringe several years ago, and he also owns these properties here at the northwest corner of Blackman Road and Lyle McDonald Court. The total property is 79 acres. The Murfreesboro 2035 plan does recommend that this property develop as general commercial, and that is to serve interstate commercial users, especially with the park property just to the north. We expect there to be a increasing amount of interstate traffic at this interchange, as well as with the growing number of residential uses in the Blackman area. With that being said, I'll be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing, and the Planning Commission recommended approval unanimously of this request.
Hey, Matthew, I can't find it in here. Would a truck stop be available in a commercial highway zoning?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for Mr. Baumley? Okay, thank you, Mr. Baumley. All right, we'll need to conduct a public hearing and consider zoning approximately 79 acres along Veterans Parkway and Blackman Road as highway commercial CH district and commercial fringe CF district simultaneous with annexation. Mr. Donald McDonald, applicant, 2017-404. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. No one jump at once. All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and we'll now consider for passage on first reading ordinance 17OZ07.2 to zone approximately 79 acres along Veterans Parkway and Blackman Road is highway commercial CH district and commercial fringe CF district simultaneous with annexation.
Mayor McFarland, I would reference that there is an amended map for this one as well with the 10-foot strip.
All right, I'll go on and say my piece so we can get this out of the way. Mental health facility, salvage facility, pawn shop, wrecker and storage yard, sheet metal shop, bus terminal, truck stop is not really what I want on a gateway, and I'm real disappointed at our planning staff for suggesting that we do this, to be commercial highway without any kind of overlay, without any kind of vision to what we could do with a nice piece of property on the gateway into our city from the west. I'm just going to leave it right there. I'd go for a planned commercial development, a gateway overlay, something, but not a truck stop, not a wrecker storage yard on one of the last pieces of property we got close. And I understand why we would try to annex it near our park property so we can get the revenue off the development that happens around there, but maybe what that means is we shouldn't have gone out there outside the city to buy the park property. I mean, maybe we live and learn, but I just can't go for the bulk zoning.
Matthew.
No.
Go ahead, Ms. Gills.
Can we do an overlay?
Well, not without re-advertising the property. And what I referenced earlier is we do anticipate citywide design guidelines that would address a number of design features, increased architectural requirements, landscaping, things of that nature that would be for the entire city. I don't think we envision that to be quite as strict as the Gateway Design Overlay District, but we do anticipate having those additional guidelines citywide. And we've just had to kind of take a temporary break just due to other obligations, but we do intend on picking that back up again in the very near future.
Will that apply to all properties, or will it be kind of grandfathered in? I mean, like, what kind of rights will they have on that as far as ownership rights? Craig, do you know the answer to that? Is it a design guidelines? Does it apply to everything that's currently zoned, or do they get to go under the old guidelines?
I think it's going to depend upon how far along they are in the process of developing the property. Mr. Eyes might have more.
I believe it would apply to vacant property.
Okay.
I think that if there's already a structure, a business on a property, we would have a hard time coming in with a design guideline and requiring them to change something.
Right.
But I think for new development on that property that hasn't started anything yet, it would apply. If someone has started something, even though it's not built, there'd be a question of how far along they were, perhaps. But certainly on raw land, the guidelines would apply.
And there have been development pressures in this area, development that could occur outside the city limits. And I certainly appreciate and respect Mr. LaLance's comment about having some of the standards in place. But, part of what we were struggling with was there's development pressures. We saw the opportunity for things to develop in the city as a better outcome. And we know there's utility extensions and other work that the planning staff's done with the design guidelines. So, certainly understand and respect the comment. We share those same concerns about how it looks and how it feels and how it develops. We thought we had the best shot under city's development that it would turn out better, and the property owner was willing to work with us. There was some thought that they wanted a more intense zoning use on the commercial highways, what was kind of discussed, and we understand that we need to keep the design guideline process moving. We share, the same concern. We want to keep that moving. But there were, potential projects that could have happened with it being developed as an outside the city property, and that was part of the reason that drove some of the timing.
It's obviously limited without sewer significantly,
Yes,
so,
sir.
Mr. Baumley, is Mr. Roundtree, are you representing the applicant? Could we ask you a question, if you don't mind? And realizing that this is all speculation, but I think you've obviously been around with some of the development that's going on in the city. Is it something that you, as the applicants, would feel comfortable knowing that these design guidelines are very close? I can't imagine y'all could get a plan through before those got passed, but would you stipulate that you would be okay to adhering to those design guidelines before even knowing that they're approved, that you would put that on here, that you'd stipulate that the property would go under those design guidelines?
Yes, Mayor McFarland. We also were willing to make a deed restriction on no truck stop, Mr. LaLance, to make sure that's not our front door. I think Mr. McDonald's very sensitive to the fact that this is a high-profile piece of property. I think it's consistent. The CH zoning is what we've done before on its adjacent property, so I think we're staying in the same vein, but I think what we're all hearing is that this has major implications on the perception of Murfreesboro. So we are more than willing to work with the design guidelines that are going to be put forward, but as well as add a deed restriction to make sure there's no sort of truck stop kind of looking facility right at our gate.
So would we do restrictive covenants until the design guidelines are implemented? Is that?
Mr. Tyndall?
Yeah. I'm not, but the design guidelines I don't think will cover uses.
Well, but they will cover open space. They're going to cover building facades. They're going to cover different signage in different areas. And I have, I think that's going to cover a lot of the things that we're talking about. And yeah,
it will not prohibit or challenge a use, to my understanding.
And with respect to design, I think for most of the greenfield development in the city, and I think Kurt and Eddie can attest to this, even for areas that are not in the Gateway Design Overlay District. We're requiring architectural elevations, requiring, seeking voluntarily for developers to provide upgraded building elevations, and for the most part, developers, and this is, I think, been our track record for about the last 10 years or so, developers see what the expectations are in the community, and many of them are voluntarily doing these things already.
So, Matthew, on the commercial fringe, what is allowed in the commercial fringe?
Commercial fringe versus commercial highway. Commercial fringe was designed to be a more sensitive zoning district to adjacent residential areas. It would not allow the wrecker services, the automobile sales, the hotels, the motels. It would allow shopping centers, but only shopping centers under a certain square footage, I think under a certain, perhaps 150,000 square feet. So it wouldn't allow like an Avenue shopping center, but it would allow like a, Publix anchored shopping center. And there are some additional requirements with respect to speaker boxes for fast food restaurants and locations of gas pumps. So commercial fringe is generally designed to be a transitional zone from commercial highway to residential uses, and commercial highway is designed to be the zone that is on the highway.
So just like we've done in the past, we still could approve this commercial fringe and do a case-by-case study based on, with the developer, what goes there?
Yes, sir. You could, because it was zoned as, or because it was advertised as commercial highway and commercial fringe is a step down, and Mr. Ives can confirm this, you could approve all of it as commercial fringe if you so chose, without re-advertising the public hearing. And then, of course, Mr. Wade, yes, we'll continue to review each site plan as it comes before us for compliance with our regulations, and continue to work with developers to make sure that we get a good quality product.
That is correct. You can approve this as a lesser zone than what was advertised, or less intensive zoning.
Yes, sir, Mr. McDonald.
Donald McDonald, 2104 Blackman Road. I live across the road from this, and I'm not about to put something in a development over there that's not going to be desirable for the Blackman area. I have to look at it, and I don't want a warehouse, and I don't want a truck stop and those kinds of things. We're going to try to put the best we can, and I will put deed restrictions in whatever we need to do to stop that if these new restrictions are not adequate. And we're perfectly willing to go along with the new restrictions, whatever staff comes up with.
So if staff is willing to work with the developer on this, I'd like to make the motion that we approve, subject to all staff comments.
As commercial highway? Commercial fringe. It's important.
I mean, that's yeah.
Oh.
No, it's just
As advertised?
Yes, as
largely
advertised.
commercial highway with one strip as commercial fringe?
Yes.
That's the motion?
Yes.
So how are we, I mean, what are we pulling out, or how's the staff, are we directing the staff what?
Well, we would have a.
How are they going to determine
we would
what's?
have we would have a second reading, correct?
Exactly.
So is it possible that you guys would work with the applicant and come back with us at second reading on all of the things that they have taken out, like distribution, warehouse, wrecker service, truck stop, and those things that maybe Mr. McDonald could look at that list and say, oh, I know that these things we're not doing.
To delay second reading until they can get some deed restrictions recorded? Is that?
Or at least come to us with those restrictions, saying this is what we're going to put on and before that it would be effective. That
In the CH,
those
in the CH section.
Correct.
You're saying in the commercial highway section. Is that what?
I think that's what we.
Yes.
Somebody wants to second it, go ahead. I'm just saying, I think I'd rather see that first, and then we vote on it, be my preference, but
we've done it like this in the past. That's what I'm saying. Why do
Would you rather
defer it.
defer it or wait? because it still has to come before second reading.
I have absolute trust in everything Mr. McDonald said,
I do too.
and there's no question that he wants a quality product going on there because it's in his front yard. The only thing is we're voting on something that I'm not sure that we know exactly what it is we're approving because it hasn't been worked out. I don't think that it would be that big a deal if we deferred it and delayed it till the next meeting, the vote on whatever it is that you guys have actually negotiated, so that we can physically see in front of us, because you're agreeing to every restrictive covenant that we're basically wanting to put on it, which is very nice, but I think that might be not fair to you. We may come up with an idea that says something that you would say, well, I agreed to it, but I don't agree to that. I'm just afraid you're giving up too much without us knowing exactly what we're voting on. So I don't know how unless there's something that I don't know about, how it would hurt us to defer it for a week or until our next meeting and actually look at what it is that we're wanting to approve. Is there any sense of urgency, Mr. McDonald? I mean, okay.
Not a second on Kurt's motion. Is that a motion?
Is there a second?
There's not a second yet, but Mr. Wade, do you want to?
If that's what the council prefers, that's fine.
All right, so Mr. Wade withdraws his motion. Is there a motion to defer? And Mr. McDonald, I think, like Councilman Smotherman said, I think the track record you have out there, I really appreciate you working with the city and knowing that as long as you've been out in the Blackman community, that you're not wanting to do anything that's detrimental to that. And as a matter of fact, I think the property we bought for our park property was, not in your family, but in the McDonald family. So we know you're vested in that community, and we appreciate you.
It's home for Mr. McDonald, and I want it to be best for you as well as best for us. So I will move for deferral.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Ms. Wright, call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade. Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Pursuant to Resolution 17-RPH08, adopted by the City Council on March 16, 2017, conduct a public hearing to consider an amendment to approximately 204. Yes, sir.
Mayor McFarland, I just want to make sure that I get y'all what you need before the next meeting. The list of uses that I've got: truck stop, warehousing, distribution. Are there any other uses that?
I think that Mr. McDonald and Mr. Roundtree could easily look at that commercial highway zoning and say, we're not going to do a wrecker facility. We're not going to do, and I think that most all the things that they're going to see that they're not going to want to do anyway will be the majority of the list that the council members are going to have concern in: distribution, warehouse, and I think that will. That would suffice maybe if the applicants would just look at those.
Is it possible that the staff could get that to us, just if there was some concern about something that was not on the list or something? Could you get that to us before the next reading?
Can you get us
to provide you the letter that
they have submitted?
Yeah, certainly. I'll include it with the agenda materials for the next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you.
And a letter will suffice as opposed to the actual covenants being recorded before.
Yeah, I can't speak for everyone else, but I think that knowing who the applicant is and the willingness, I think that it's going to have to go through 2 more readings, and if they say that that's what they're going to do, I think that's what they'll do.
Okay, thank you for the guidance.
Okay, pursuant to Resolution 17-RPH08, adopted by the City Council on March 16, 2017, we'll conduct a public hearing to consider a proposed amendment to approximately 247.3 acres in the Planned Residential Development PRD District located west of St. Andrews Drive, Evergreen Farms PRD, Old South Properties, Inc., applicant 2017-401. Notice of sub-public hearing was published in the April 3, 2017 issue of a local newspaper. Mike's yours.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland and council members. Old South Properties wishes to amend the Planned Residential District, or the PRD, zoning entitlements for Evergreen Farms Phase 2, which is the westernmost 247 acres of Evergreen Farms located along the west side of St. Andrews Drive. The PRD for Evergreen Farms Phase 2 was first approved in 2004 and was then amended in 2015. The current entitlements for Phase 2 are 957 single-family lots with front-loaded garages, 68 single-family lots with side-loaded garages, and 334 townhouses. That's a total of 1,359 dwelling units in Phase 2. With this application, the applicant wishes to make two major changes to the PRD. First, the applicant would like to convert a portion of the property that's currently approved for single-family units to allow for additional townhouses. The applicant would reduce the number of single-family units by 66 and at the same time increase the number of townhouses by 115 from 334 to 449. This would lead to a net increase of 49 dwelling units, and the density in Phase 2 would increase from 5.49 dwelling units per acre to 5.69 dwelling units per acre. And the new total of dwelling units would be 1,408. Again, currently approved are 1,359. The second part of the rezoning request is to revise the lot standards for a portion of the property that lies west of Puckett Creek that's currently approved for single-family detached units. As currently approved, those 376 lots are required to have a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet and a minimum lot width of 60 feet. With the amendment, the minimum lot size would be reduced to 5,000 square feet, and the minimum lot width would be reduced to 50 feet. While this change would lead to more compact lots, this particular part of the rezoning request would lead to no increase in unit count or density. The Planning Commission reviewed the proposed changes and held a public hearing on March 1st. They voted unanimously to send this forward to you with a favorable recommendation. Staff is happy to answer any questions, and Clyde Roundtree from Huddleston Steel is here to talk more about this project as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony.
Sorry, it's small, but I think it'll help a little bit. Anyone see that to some degree? Really, just to reiterate what Don's already said, the area in question right now is this section right here that's currently single-family detached homes, 66 lots in that yellow area. What we're asking, what we're proposing is changing that into townhomes. And so that's that one little quadrant here, changing that quadrant there. These are townhomes already, so we're really extending the townhome type of product up into that space. So you see how that continues onward. And then this is the overall site plan for the single-family detached home, the lots. Really, like Donald said, there's no increase in net gain on the lots. It's just basically they're smaller lots. The advantage is that it's less pressure on the Puckett Creek green space, and it allows us to not have to do as much filling into the floodplain area. So I just want to make that's really the synopsis. There is a net gain overall on the amount of homes that will be provided through the request, but basically we're just changing the product from single-family home to a townhome product. So that makes sense. This is just the before and after of our request. And I'm available for any questions you have.
Mr. Roundtree, is there an actual gain there in green space? Is that what I understood?
There's a gain.
Yeah.
There's a gain in green
Do you know
space.
roughly how much that is, acre, 2 acres?
Several acres. Eddie, right off hand,
Yeah, I can see there's
28 acres originally proposed. I think we gained another, I'm not sure,
okay.
5 or 10 acres.
Okay.
All the access points remain the same. The only thing that came through, I think we may have some neighbors here that are going to be concerned from the county side. So we'll address their concerns once they present their concerns. But we did, the layout basically, all the road systems stayed intact the way they were originally.
Any other questions?
Does the road system connect to the? I can't see.
It does in 2 different locations. On Higdon it connects, and on a county, I think it's County Park Lane. These 2 points go on in through the county.
And how does it connect back over to the other development on the right?
There's a bridge that's being proposed across Bucket Creek, and that's a joint venture between the city and the developer. That's
Okay.
been on the docket for a while.
Yeah, I remember that. That's in the original site plan.
Yes, sir.
Mhm.
Any questions for the applicant?
Mr. Roundtree, do you have any idea when that bridge would be, that process would begin on construction of that bridge in comparison to when the development would begin?
If you might indulge me, Mr. Smotherman, just to give you an update. This was on the City Council agenda last week for approval of the joint funding agreement and design contract. We're proposing to bring back to Council in the CIP a plan for funding it for the next fiscal year, which would be our current 2017 for construction. The phasing plan that Old South has proposed will take a little bit of time to actually connect to Higdon and Country Park, but we would envision starting the bridge construction later in 2017 or perhaps early 2018.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas.
Mr. Smotherman, as far as the green space, there is a little over 9 acres of an increase.
Okay, we'll need to conduct a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak for or against the changes in this planned residential development, please come to the podium. Okay, seeing none, we'll consider for passage on first reading ordinance 17-OZ08 to amend the conditions applicable to approximately 247.3 acres in the planned residential development PRD district located west of St. Andrews Drive, Evergreen Farms PRD 2017-401. Bless you.
I make a motion to approve sub-staff comments.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance. Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Pursuant to Resolution 17-RPH09 adopted by the City Council on March 16, 2017, we'll need to conduct a public hearing to consider adoption of a plan of services for an annexation of approximately 5,000 linear feet of Shores Road right-of-way, which had been proposed to be annexed to the City of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. City of Murfreesboro applicant 2017-502. Notice of the said public hearing was published in the April 3, 2017 issue of a local newspaper. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. Our next public hearing regards the annexation petition and plan of services for 5,000 linear feet of Shores Road right-of-way. You'll see it on the telestrator going straight from Veterans Parkway directly adjacent to the end of the West Lawn subdivision. Totals just a little under a mile of right-of-way. Back in 2007, with the West Lawn PUD that was adopted by City Council, one of the components of the West Lawn development was the realignment of Shores Road, and you'll notice how, with the Veterans Parkway construction, Shores Road and Blackman Road curved like this to form an intersection at Veterans Parkway. Well, what the plan proposed was to actually curve up Shores Road and curve down Blackman Road like so to get a superior alignment at a future signalized intersection with Veterans Parkway. So that roadway improvement has been contemplated since 2007. With the recession, development on West Lawn stagnated and never moved forward. We have since received a site plan. The Planning Commission actually approved the site plan yesterday for the West Lawn townhome development, which is this area here. That's a site plan for 98 townhomes on individual lots of record. And with that project comes the realignment of Shores Road that's been anticipated since 2007. So with that being the fact, with the fact that Shores Road is proposed to be realigned as a part of this city project or city development, and with the fact that West Lawn, directly adjacent to the subject property, is already in the city limits and is bringing traffic onto Shores Road with the new residences that are being constructed on West Lawn. City staff felt it appropriate to study this 5,000 linear foot strip of Shores Road right-of-way for annexation. Some of the things that this does is, by bringing it into our jurisdiction, any city services that would be provided, such as police and fire, medical first responders, the right-of-way of Shores Road would be in the city limits, so it would be within the Murfreesboro Police Department's jurisdiction to respond to calls, and for the Fire and Rescue Department, if there were accidents on Shores Road, to respond to those calls as well. Also, it would put the right-of-way of Shores Road in the city's jurisdiction for maintenance. And Mr. Sam Huddleston with our engineering department is here, and I believe he'll have some additional information to add regarding the annexation of Shores Road as well. We've met extensively with the landowners adjacent. I know that there are some concerns that they'll raise in the public hearing, and we've met with them, and we certainly understand their concerns. There are two issues that I think will be raised during the public hearing, one of which is the annexation of the road itself, and that is what is actually before the City Council tonight is the actual annexation. There is some proposed road work that is associated with Shores Road as a function of the development of West Lawn townhomes, and what has been discussed with the developer of West Lawn townhomes is that in conjunction with that project and with the realignment of Shores Road, the segment of Shores Road that remains left over from here to Veterans Parkway will be terminated in a cul-de-sac right there. That is, while I know that will be discussed, and it is certainly an important topic, the actual vote tonight will be on the annexation of this 5,000-foot linear strip of Shores Road right-of-way. The Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval of this annexation, and I'll be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
Okay, we'll need to conduct a public hearing on the plan of services for an annexation of approximately 5,000 linear feet of Shores Road right-of-way, City of Murfreesboro applicant 2017-502. So we're going to have a public hearing on the plan of services and the annexation. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium.
My name is Brenda Tanner. I live at 3431 Shores Road. I own 3311 Shores Road and also 15-acre tract behind that residence. As I do not wish for the city to annex Shores Road. I don't see that there's anything that the city can do to improve our neighborhood. I understand the problem with the traffic. TDOT moved and realigned Shores Road and Blackman Road several years ago with the knowledge that West Lawn subdivision was coming in, and they viewed that as being all right. I feel like all we need is a red light at the end of Shores Road. I know that they're probably going to want to put one up there at 840 where you get off and on of 840, and I don't understand why they can't put one at the end of Shores Road on the east side and leave that open. Thank you for your time and consideration.
My name is Kenneth Hawkins. I live at 3341 on Shores Road. What I'd like to say is that I participate in my community to make sure that I can help young men understand that their voice can be heard at both the district, troop, and council level for the Middle Tennessee Boy Scouts. I've served my country and in a combat zone, and as a veteran feel I have a right to have my voice heard. So I would ask that you guys would hear my voice as well as those who are here today to speak. As far as the road being annexed, I don't know that I really have a concern with the road being annexed. Who owns it really doesn't matter to me a whole lot. What matters to me is that once that road is annexed, I lose my voice. And what I have given to my country to have a voice, and what I give to my community to show these young men that are scouts that they have a voice, is lost. Mr. Smotherman, you said it exactly. If we don't have an overlay in place, or if we don't have a plan in place, then there's no way to control it once it's zoned. The same thing is true. And we did meet with the Planning Commission, and we were told these two items, the cul-de-sacking as well as the annexation, are separate items. And don't worry about the cul-de-sacking. We're not going to talk about it. The city council isn't going to hear it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have anything to do with this. We're talking about annexing the road. And that's true. But once you annex the road, I lose my voice. You can cul-de-sac it. You can put a firehouse there. You can put a carnival at the end of it. And I have no voice to be heard because it's no longer in the county. It's now a city property. So I would ask that you make those two items linked, or that this council say, if you're going to annex the road, anything future done to the road has to be addressed. There are a few properties on Shores Road that are to the right of the entrance, and if you can put this up, I can show you. How do you put this on the screen?
We can see what you're doing.
Okay. So these properties here, they're not part of this. Well, I'm not doing very good here. They're not part of that road there. So the goal to cul-de-sac that then takes away the ability for us to have future sales of commercial or the CF zoning or anything to that nature, or to have a right-of-way to say, we don't want anything done with those properties if you then cul-de-sac it. And the Planning Commission said that, well, we're not going to let you zone that as commercial. We won't let you do any of those things because the geometry relative to Veterans Parkway would be wrong. On the other side of Blackman, there's no cul-de-sac planned. It's the same geometry. The same thing is happening on Blackman's side that's happening on the Shores side, and there's no plans to cul-de-sac it yet. There's a commercial zone on the other side of Shores Road on the Blackman side, so why couldn't we be zoned that way? So I think the overarching things that I would like to say are, we'd like to have a voice when future things happen to this road and we don't feel like we'll get that, and then that when lights go in or firehouses or any of those things, we'd like to be able to have a say to that and not just be railroaded and told we have to take whatever the city wants us to have. And outside of that, I don't know that we really care a whole lot. And if the city is going to take it, and to Mr. Huddleston's point, they're going to do a bunch of maintenance on the road, and they're going to fix all the culverts, and they're going to spend the money to put all this stuff in, okay, my expectation is that that's done pretty quickly, and that the city spends that money pretty quickly to make those improvements, since you're taking it from us, and that's what you're telling us you're doing it for. So That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Mike Tanner. I live at 3431 Shores Road, and I oppose the annexation of Shores Road. My first and most important point is that this annexation, in my opinion, is a waste of the taxpayers' money of the city. And yes, I am a city taxpayer. The annexation report is a well-written document attempting to justify the unjustifiable. The report refers to the 5,000-foot section roadway as substandard. The reality is it's a straight section of road with an excellent asphalt topping and not a single pothole. This is only one of several assumptions or maybe embellishments in the report. If safety of the general public is a priority, work should begin tomorrow to put a traffic signal at the Shores and Veterans intersection. It's 2 years late already. And yes, we know that the future plan is to close that intersection. Future planning is necessary and good, but in my opinion, when it comes to at the expense of current public safety needs, I'll just call it misplaced priorities so as not to offend anyone. The proposed annexation of Shores Road is not the primary entry or exit route for West Lawn subdivision. The Planning Commission staff comments of February 1st, 2017 uses the phrase multiple public streets will directly access Shores Road. In this case, multiple could mean 2 or it could mean 3, depending on whether Birch Tree Drive is counted, as it will connect to the section of Shores Road that the staff proposes to dead end. At the time West Lawn was developed, we were assured that Shores Road would remain in the county, and the obstructive rerouting plan that creates a condition of functional impairment on the first 8 tracks of Shores Road would be restudied. I suppose it was restudied all right, because on April 1st, 2017, it was finally revealed to one of the neighbors that Shores Road would be dead-ended just a few hundred feet from Veterans Parkway. That decision apparently was made around 2006, 2008, when the first realignment was done, because some extra property was purchased down there for that purpose. And if you look on the plat, it shows a little bulge there in front of the first house. That plan adversely affects all the Shores Road traffic. We, along this 5,000-foot proposed annexation section or a neighborhood, many of us have been there for 20 to 30 years. Even though small in number, we should not be encroached upon by the city, neither morally or legally. Our property deeds and taxable acreage extends to the center of Shores Road, which is somewhat at odds with staff comments of the Planning Commission dated February 1st, 2017, that no private property is included in the annexation request. I have signed documents indicating that 100% of the residences that were mailed notice of this public hearing oppose this annexation. I'm requesting permission to present these to the mayor at this time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Tanner. Mr. Tanner. Thank you.
I was trying to put the two together. Good. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Mayor, City Council, my name is Denton Hemphill. My wife Teresa and I live at 3495 Shores Road, and we are the rookies on Shores Road. We've only been there a year and a half. My concern is traffic, and we lived in Riverbend, and the Planning Commission, or lack of planning, caused that area to be gridlock 24/7. You've all traveled it. You know it's a mess over there. So we moved. moved over to Shores Road, and our concern is that, annex or not, rerouting Shores Road is going to cause nothing but a major traffic headache. I don't understand why you have to curve Shores Road to the north and curve Blackman Road to the north when the two meet on Veterans as they sit right now. And whoever said it's a substandard road really needs to drive down it and really look at yourself in the mirror and tell yourself it's substandard. It is not substandard by any means. You're going to spend money on a traffic light. You need it now. If you look through the city records, you will see, or in the county records, how many accidents have happened at Shores and Veterans, or Blackman and Veterans. And I fail to understand how the city is going to reap any financial gain by moving Shores Road and by moving Blackman Road. Somebody tell me how the city is going to benefit. I don't understand that. So I stand here being opposed to the annexation of Shores and the rerouting of Shores and creating a cul-de-sac, which will be nothing more than a gathering place for, let's hope, not undesirables. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ray Mathis, 3521 Shores Road. I'll try and get this thing up if somebody will tell me how to make it come alive. Any help? I'd like to clear it off. Oh, okay. I live, right about here, which really isn't part of it, but I just heard, of course I had ideas, that Shores Road is going to be rerouted up here, and of course a little jog here to get them to their cul-de-sac. This is highly residential area. This portion here is commercial area. This is all rural traffic. By doing this jog up here, you're mixing residential, commercial, and rural traffic into one road, and they're talking about putting a stoplight here, and of course up here where you can't see it is the off-ramp of I-840. I looked at some road that may be a comparison for these stoplights. I'm sure all of you have driven down Highway 96, crossed over I-24, and hit that stoplight. I know I do a lot. That stoplight on I-24, Highway 96, is 880 feet. This distance is 1,100 feet. 300 feet, football field, maybe 20 cars. It's going to cause a traffic jam because this interchange is going to get busy. You're putting commercial over here. This is a huge subdivision. There's going to be more going on down Shores Road. This next road is another this next stoplight is another 1,100 feet down the road. No sooner will you get through this light than you'll hit another light. You gentlemen are creating a traffic problem here. From this stoplight to Shores Road is 1,400 feet. That's acceptable. That's like from the stoplight at John Rice Boulevard down to St. Andrews Boulevard on 96, and nobody complains about that light. Oh, my screen's gone. Darn it, losing all my emphasis. Okay, 24 to John Rice Boulevard, 800 feet. This distance is 1,100 feet, very comparable. This stoplight to this new jog, 1,100 feet. Same distance, traffic jams. Shores Road at least gives you a 1,400-foot distance, which will probably alleviate traffic jams, I know. But my main concern is residential traffic, commercial traffic, rural traffic, all being routed up this road when you have a perfectly fine interchange right here that can handle it. The folks in this residential can then come out and take this and not have to mingle with the commercial traffic. That's really all I have to say. The annexation doesn't bother me so much as the previous speaker said, taking my voice away does. If the city annexes this property, I won't even have a right to come up and speak at this type of assembly again because I have no control over what goes over that road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mathis.
Good evening. My name is Ashley Pope. I own and reside at 3341 Shores Road, and I also oppose the annexation of the 5,000 linear feet. I live a bit closer to where the cul-de-sac is anticipated to be placed. I agree that I'm not as much concerned over the annexation as I am over a couple of the series of choices that appear to be already planned for us in that area. Mr. Blumley was very kind in setting up a meeting for us with the staff, and they did have everyone there in force to hear our concerns. And a very wise man said to us that there was a difference between being heard and having your way. And I would also add to that that there's a difference between being listened to and being heard. And it became very apparent in that meeting that as we sought to gain clarification, as we sought to gain education, that it very much was, this is something that's completely separate. Once we have it, these are decisions that need to be made. This is for the safety and the geometry of the road. And we don't oppose some of those things. It was very striking to hear that the very same geometry on the other side of the road is no longer intended, as we were shared with, to dead end both sides for Blackman and for Shores, because there's already some commercial fringe property that is zoned on that side. So our question is whether or not this is just for Shores Road. It was referred to in the meeting that they cannot make these decisions to stop the annexation or to stop the cul-de-sacing because we were a special interest group or in favor of special interests, because those of us who are residents with over 30 years in the county would be considered standing in the way of city progress. I find that fascinating, considering that part of the reason for annexation to come up at this time is because of a developer who's been able to come in and start developing the property across from us. And I kept hearing forward momentum, that the developer would be able to pay for it and we would be moving forward with this plan. I did hear Mr. Blomley mention about first responders. I can share with you that we already have a good deal of confusion when dealing with the West Lawn subdivision on who should be responding. In fact, over a year ago, we were ping-ponged back and forth between the sheriff's office and the police department, and it took over 6 hours for someone to come out to address the fact that someone was shooting on the West Lawn property less than 100 yards from our home. I can also say that those of us on the other side of Shores Road received very quick responses from the sheriff. The last and final thing that I would share is regarding the voice. I know that we would be able to approach this council and to speak to you about our concerns, because I know that you guys see us as good partners in your county. I also know that just because you guys decide not to move forward with annexation does not mean that the city staff will not approach the county and that some of these plans will go forward. What would be very nice is that we do have representation with the county to be able to say these are our concerns, these are our issues, and we have great faith that those would be heard. Sometimes the purpose of government, while inefficient, is gridlock so that everyone can work it forward, moving forward in the best interests of each other. We ask for an equal seat at the table as we work through some of these issues regarding our livelihood, our access, our future property values, and what we do on an everyday basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pope.
Hi, I'm Beth Spivey, and I live at 5083 Veterans Parkway. My property is here. I'm on the corner of Shores and Veterans. I cannot add to what my neighbors have said beautifully, except that I oppose annexation. Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Teresa Hemphill, and I live at 3495 Shores Road, and I oppose the annexation of Shores Road, mainly because I live half mile down this road. I moved here because I wanted to have a rural community. I have horses, which is why I moved there. I would certainly hate to have to worry about the safety of my horses by moving down through a commercial area and another set of homes. And I don't really think people there would like me to bring my horse trailer down through there with my horses either. So thinking about safety, thinking about changing this road really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's a great road. I don't have any problems on it. And if you've ever driven a truck with a horse trailer on it, you know how difficult it is to manage. Well, I don't have any difficulties, and I am a woman driver. So with that being said, I certainly don't want my road to change. I'd like to be able to continue driving my truck with my horse trailer down that road in a safe fashion. Thank you very much.
Tell me your last name again.
Hemphill.
Hemphill. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Hemphill. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. And Scouts, y'all are welcome to stay the entire meeting if you want to, or y'all are welcome to go. I will say y'all have made it the longest amount of any Scout troop that's ever come in. So
That's worth a couple of badges.
that is worth a couple of badges. So you're not going to hurt our feelings if y'all need to scoot out since it's getting later. So I just saw you guys and wanted to let y'all know that.
School night.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. All right. Thank you. We'll need to consider for adoption Resolution 17R PS09 to adopt a plan of services, this is for the plan of services for 5,000 linear feet of Shores Road right-of-way City of Murfreesboro applicant. So this is for the plan of services. Y'all have some questions for?
Not on the plan of services. We're going.
Okay. All right. This is just for the plan of services.
I'll move for an approval on the plan of services.
Second. Motion is second. Ms. Wright, for call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance. Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade. Mayor McFarland.
Aye. We'll now need to consider for adoption Resolution 17R809 to annex approximately 5,000 linear feet of Shores Road right-of-way and to incorporate the same within the corporate boundaries of the City of Murfreesboro, Tennessee. City of Murfreesboro applicant 2017-502. So this is for the annexation.
Mr. Blomley, could you clarify the why a little, at least re-express why this is necessary?
Mr. Shacklet, and I think that Mr. Huddleston will be able to elaborate a little bit more if he would humor me to come up here in a moment. We have, 10 years ago when this property was annexed, when the West Lawn property was annexed, we had a little bit of a different philosophy about annexing adjacent rights of way that were substandard. And when we mean substandard, we don't mean that it's a dirt road or anything like that. We mean that it's not built to city street standards, and that includes curbs and gutters, sidewalks, things of that nature. A width that is prescribed by our standard street design specifications. So it's not a derogatory term toward the street. It's just in reference to not meeting the city street standards. At that time in 2007, we did not annex that right-of-way. The West Lawn subdivision is now developing in full force. We've received a site plan for a multifamily development in this area. We're almost to the final section of the single-family portion. You see a small area here that is platted, but we've received about 3 or 4 more plat sections that have not been recorded yet, but that are under construction and will be recorded in the near future. So West Lawn is bringing a lot of traffic with it, and we feel that it's appropriate to have the adjacent roadway that's going to handle this traffic that this city development is generating in our jurisdiction, so that we can maintain it, so that we can so that our first responders can respond to it, and in addition, right now the developers are having to deal with 2 jurisdictions because they're making, and Mr. Huddleston can elaborate on this. They're making ties from their tie-ins from their development onto a county road. So it's a city development that is essentially having to go to the county highway department for the tie-ins to the county road. And so I believe that has presented a little bit of an issue, and it's really kind of an inefficient way to handle those connections. And I think I'd like to invite Mr. Huddleston to come up here and maybe elaborate a little bit more on some other reasons why staff is in favor of the annexation.
I think Mr. Blomley really summarized it quite well. We're really needing to consolidate the jurisdictions, and we're asking the county to do the heavy lifting on some of the road improvements and plans approval for projects that that are not in their jurisdiction, and we're having to split and share those responsibilities. Is really staff's goal on this to just consolidate the jurisdiction on who was responsible for this section of Shores Road into one agency, and that's the City of Murfreesboro. We mentioned the townhome plans, and that really brought it to light for us, but the townhome plans are going to require readjustments to the existing roadway on Shores Road, and then a realignment of it, really, and part of that will be reviewed by the city and approved by the city, and under the current annexation situation, we'd have to demand that part of it go to the county for their review and approval. So it really was an intent to try to consolidate the jurisdictions. And then also for the city to be responsible for the traffic and delivery of services on the roads that were impacted. Those were our two thoughts on that.
Has the consideration of one of the property owners said, I think it was Mr. Tanner, mentioned that his deed goes to the middle of the road and we're annexing property. Has that been resolved from the legal department?
I'll give you a little information on that. Mr. Tanner's exactly correct. There are probably 75% of the properties along there that their deed reference goes to the center of Shores Road. There were 5 subdivision tracts toward the western end that actually dedicated right-of-way for Shores Road. They were subdivision lots, and so understanding the process, that was a requirement. By practice, in the state of Tennessee, when public funds are used to improve roads, which is likely what happened to Shores Road some time back, then that became a public road. Then the question always arises, well, where do the boundaries of the public responsibility stop? And so there is a good bit of case law and a good bit of policy and practice established by the Department of Transportation and then adopted by agencies like the City of Murfreesboro that establish a presumptive right-of-way for this part of Shores Road. I believe that presumptive right-of-way would probably stop at the top of the ditch as you're going from the roadway onto their private property, that roadside ditch being a part of the roadway itself. In other cases, in more rural areas, it's actually perhaps where the farmer's fence is. In other cases where utility lines have been installed along the roadway, especially power lines, it's where the power poles are. And so the right-of-way is what the right-of-way is. I don't think there's any debate about what the right-of-way is. All we're talking about is whose responsibility it is to maintain the things in that right-of-way, the public drainage system and the public road system. And we believe it's in the best situation is for the city to be responsible for Shores Road at this time.
My question, the question that's in my mind is the restriction on us annexing property. So are we able to make the improvements to the road if we annexed it? Are we legally able to annex property to make these improvements? Because isn't it going to entail some annexation of private property, or is that not the case?
Councilman, it is our opinion that the right-of-way established over time supersedes the deeds. And yes, there's a deed that says to the center line. We have also been advised by the assessor that he does not assess taxes on that part of their property, if you will, that's under asphalt or that's part of the road or part of the ditch. Well, the assessor doesn't think so, but regardless of that,
hold on one second.
The right-of-way
public hearing's closed, and we'll get that information.
The established right-of-way supersedes the old deeds and the new deeds that even follow the old legal descriptions. We believe that property as right-of-way is subject to annexation by the city, whether it had been done at the time of the annexation of the West Lawn area itself as a part of that annexation or at this time.
Have we done this before?
Yes.
There was an annexation for the right-of-way only of East Overall Creek Road off of Old Salem Road, north of New Salem Highway.
So we annexed the road, and on one side of the road was county property?
Yes, sir. That was, in that situation, it was property that we had annexed. It was Mr. Alcorn was the applicant. He wanted to develop a subdivision on it. When he made the request for annexation last year, the adjacent East Overall Creek Road right-of-way was not included, and that was a little bit of an oversight on our part, because when we started digging into how that property was going to be developed, we realized that we needed to annex and improve the East Overall Creek Road right-of-way to provide our rolling services to the lots that Mr. Alcorn was proposing to create off of East Overall Creek Road. So we went back after the fact, studied just the right-of-way of East Overall Creek Road, and voted to annex that right-of-way only.
Correct.
Bill.
No, go ahead.
Matthew. Mr. LaLance.
Go ahead.
Hold on one second. Mr. LaLance.
Eddie, go ahead.
Matthew, or Sam, it doesn't matter. Either one of y'all feels artistic. Could you draw on the screen here where you think that Blackman Road and Shores Road would connect?
I may actually close Mr. Blomley's exhibit and open a second exhibit that has some air photography under it, and so you can see those references. Shores Road, of course, here, Blackman Road here. Our master plan for West Lawn, which was approved in 2007, realigns Shores Road to here, and also Blackman Road to here.
And that'd be creating a cul-de-sac on Blackman Road there.
The cul-de-sacs were not part of their master plan. That was something that was contemplated with the Veterans Parkway project by the purchase of additional right-of-way, and that was referenced by one of the speakers tonight.
Would it be possible to cul-de-sac Blackman Road there, run the road across so you straighten out your intersection there, which will probably be a signalized intersection at some point, and also allow Shores Road to exist as it currently does without going all the way down to Shores Road, and let the West Lawn area support itself? The increased traffic coming out of the Shores or the West Lawn area turn and come over so that the intersection would align at the same exact point, carrying the bulk of the traffic to a signalized intersection, but leaving the county alone.
So part of our thinking on this as a signalized intersection here, signalization creates order, but it also creates friction. If you understand what I'm saying, it creates, sometimes you have to wait for that light to turn green. Leaving Old Shores Road open gives the ability for that cut-through traffic in multiple directions to avoid the signalization. And you keep in mind that we always want to be looking not just tomorrow, but 20 years, 50 years down the road. And so if you guys have seen abuses at signalized intersections, we all have. And so our concern would be that at heavy traffic times, Shores Road traffic would actually cut through to avoid the signalization and create conflicts at this location with traffic moving on Veterans. We're trying our best to preserve the arterial capacity for future generations on Veterans Parkway by not getting it clogged up with unsignalized accesses, unregulated accesses, and those other things that create some of the headaches we've seen around town. And so our thinking was that we want the traffic to go to a regulated signal, and we want all the traffic to go that regulated signal, and not have an easy shortcut or bypass around it.
But if you cul-de-sac Blackman Road at the end there,
Yeah.
you bring the intersection across as you proposed, and I get what you're saying about the friction created, but there's also the benefit of a light being down the street, and we saw that with, say, Love Court on Memorial, and how difficult it was to get out there. Well, they'd always wanted a light. They didn't get a light there, but the Walmart on Memorial has created a signal now so that with it stopping the traffic flow, it makes it much easier to get off Love Court onto Memorial Boulevard now. So, and I think you would see that same effect for the county residents of being able to get onto the roadway. Even though they didn't get a signalized intersection, they would still have access to that roadway, but without allowing the burden to be shifted to them. If you cul-de-sac that road that you're drawing into over to Shores Lane, right before you get to Shores Road, if you were to cul-de-sac it there and let the West Lawn subdivision work their way down to that intersection so that they would have a signalized intersection to get all their traffic out of there, it looks like a win-win to me, because
So the one thing I would point out here, you're 2,200 feet from interstate interchange. This is going to be a 30,000 car per day facility. If you recall, it's proposed on our major thoroughfare plan, Veterans Parkway, to be extended to I-24. It needs to be, we need to maintain its arterial capacity. So from that standpoint, we believe that limiting the number of accesses and making sure those accesses are through regulated signalized intersections on a high-speed, high-volume roadway would in the long term benefit the community. Certainly, it's possible to leave it open.
But if you shut off Blackman Road's access to what I'm calling the cul-de-sac in there now, and go ahead and connect it, you're only creating one additional access road, because Blackman's still going to connect to it, West Lawn's going to connect to it, and Shores Road would connect to it. So basically, you would have 3 roads connecting instead of 2 roads connecting. So you're not looking at a full intersection down there, which would make it even more difficult to get in and out, because you'd have to deal with traffic that's coming from the Blackman side.
And those things may all be good observations. What I will say is that we have a plan in front of us today at the Planning Commission that wants to realign Shores Road. Our view was that we do the work on the Shores Road side that's anticipated now. We don't have a plan when the resident or the speaker said that we didn't have a plan to cul-de-sac Blackman Road. The statement was we don't have a current plan, we don't have a working plan. We have a concept to cul-de-sac that, we have a future plan to cul-de-sac it, but I've got a current plan that wants to realign Shores Road today, and so we were going to work on the Shores Road side. We'll have to wait on the future development to give us an alternate route out for Blackman, or the city would need to construct that as a separate project.
Is there a way that the current alignment with Shores Road and with Blackman Road right now, is there a way to, you've got that triangle piece that's right there, where Shores meets Veterans? Is there a way to keep Shores as it is and make that intersection work?
I think the traffic and engineering opinion on that is that cul-de-sacing Shores Road would be the best option. The distance and the geometry on Shores Road that TDOT provided is minimal at best. The tangent approach to that is minimal at best. They did the minimum necessary to make the realignment, reconnection between Veterans and Blackman and Shores. Those are all possibilities. It's your staff's recommendation that we move ahead with cul-de-sacing Shores Road. And we'd certainly be open to doing something different.
Can you address the question of I think I can answer one of the questions somebody asked about what would the financial benefit to the city be. I mean, all I see is it's a cost to the city. I mean, there is no financial benefit, and I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing for you guys, but I'm not exactly sure. We wouldn't typically be doing this to try to make money on it. We're trying to do this for safety and other reasons. So, I hope you understand we're talking about spending money to do something, not taking something away from you so that we can make money on it. That's clearly not that's clearly not the situation. But I do want to ask to address the idea of the kind of the loss of voice. And I don't think that I understand fully. So if we annex it, so I mean, if I'm looking at this like it's just a piece of property and I ask to be annexed, I still own the property. I still have a voice. On the roadway, is that different? If we annex it, that means we can just go in there and put a cul-de-sac. We don't care what they say. We don't care what we say. If you say it or Rom says it, we're putting a stop sign or a barrier up, and that's the end. How would that process work?
So the county has processes they go through for modifications to roadways, and that's the system is in place. The city we have our processes. The only difference is the location at which those decisions are made change. City staff is working under the direction of the city manager, who takes his direction from the mayor and council, and so we're an extension of you. And so we're executing projects that we believe are priorities for the city, and we believe follow the practices and policies of the city. We certainly take seriously interactions from the public about safety issues, road conditions, and all of those things. We always fall back to our standard operating procedures on reviewing and approving modifications, reviewing and approving plans, asking for funding, and all of those things. That's not going to change because we annex it. It'll be consolidated to one jurisdiction, and that'd be the city of Murfreesboro. But the ability to influence public roadways through a deliberative body like the mayor and council will still be there. The ability to petition the city manager and say, hey, we need some help out here, that is still there. It's a different phone number. The process is just change locations.
I know the public hearing's over, but so the thing is they told us once they annex the road, they can do what they want. And the developer is the one paying for these changes.
I appreciate you. The public hearing is closed right now. I understand what you.
I mean, what you're saying is not accurate or true to what you told us. And so you guys false information while I said it, so I apologize.
Thank you. And I take it, I mean, we're not up here trying to cause issues with any of you guys, and I assume y'all are not here asking for annexation into the city. Y'all don't want, okay? So I think what we're trying, here's my opinion on this. We've got a 9-mile road that was built on Veterans Parkway, 9.2 or whatever the number was. And then you've got, I drive back and forth down 840 every day, and I've done that for about the last 6 or 7 years. And the traffic, I just was coming down 840 yesterday afternoon at 5:45, and the amount of traffic that's on 840 compared to 6 or 7 years ago is astounding. I mean, I almost thought I was on 24 coming down 840. So, to say that there's not going to be traffic issues in the area out there, I think we would be burying our head in the sand to say that there's not going to be some issues that we've got to figure. My opinion on this is right now I'd like to see some options on, I don't feel comfortable annexing a piece of the road until we know, hey, this is what you're going to be doing. This is why we're doing it. This is what the network's going to look like. So I would feel more comfortable as we're annexing the piece of property to be able to say, here's what we're doing, here's how we're going to do it. It seems like there's a few things that are hanging out there that we need to nail down.
Sure, and from staff standpoint, we felt like that consolidating that so that the city is responsible for the changes to Shores Road was the best option. Certainly, we'd yield to your opinion on not annexing at this time.
Well, and the other part too, is this going to be in the CIP plan that's coming up?
all the changes that are proposed here right now are developer driven.
Right, along shores, but the intersection in some of those areas, I mean, we'll have some city funds that'll be invested in that, will we not?
No city funds are anticipated at this time that would rise to the level of the CIP.
Right.
These all be general fund commitments.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to defer. Would ask one question on what the residents had talked about. Mr. Ives, I would like to get a clarification on to the center of the property, who pays the taxes with the property assessor, and bring that back when we address it again, just so we have that. Or Mr. Blomley.
Yeah, Mayor McFarland, I can address that. I emailed Rob Mitchell, the county property assessor, and he says that the adjacent property owners are not taxed for the right-of-way. The roadway itself is not taxed because there's no beneficial use of it to the private property owners.
So to the property owners, I would say we've got Mr. Mitchell who's emailed us that, but maybe if you guys would get with Mr. Mitchell and confirm that from y'all's standpoint, I think that would be great. So we're not, we just get what the property assessor tells us. So I would recommend maybe you guys check in with Mr. Mitchell as well. So do you have a motion?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
One other comment. I know the Planning Commission was giving credit for the situation on Thompson Lane and what took place over there in that area. That is a state road. That is not a city road. So therefore, the city doesn't have any ability to improve that situation. There's nothing the city would like better than that state step in and put 5 lanes there. And it is proposed, and it is on the drawing board, and maybe with the new.
I understand that. I just don't want to relive that.
Thank you. Yeah.
But my point being is the Planning Commission's only accountable for what they're accountable for. So I don't like them getting beat up too much for something that they're not responsible for.
Yes. All right, we have a motion and a second for deferral. Ms. Wright, call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Thank you very much. Pursuant to Resolution 17 RPH 10 adopted by the City Council on March 16, 2017, we'll conduct a public hearing to consider amending the Murfreesboro City Code Appendix A zoning, Section 2, Section 15, Chart 1, Chart 2, and Chart 1 and 2 endnotes pertaining to revisions to the zoning ordinance, Murfreesboro Planning Department, applicant 2017-801. Notice of said public hearing was published in the April 3, 2017 issue of a local newspaper. Mr. Blomley.
Thank you, Mayor McFarland. Our final public hearing tonight comes to you courtesy of the Planning Department. Some zoning ordinance amendments. As we've discussed in the past, we're constantly trying to improve our zoning ordinance. Mr. Whitaker, under his leadership, he is stressing ways that we can improve our ordinance and ways that we can make our ordinance more streamlined and more customer friendly. So there are a number of ordinance amendments in this kind of lumping together of ordinance amendments, if you will. One of which is kind of an interesting story. Back in late 2014, we brought an ordinance amendment before you, moving the footnotes from Chart 1 and Chart 2 and placing them in Section 15 of the zoning ordinance. What that's essentially has confused everybody, and so we'll have to take a mulligan on that one. And so we get calls from engineers all the time saying, "Where are the footnotes? Where are the footnotes?" Well, the footnotes are in Section 15, naturally. So this ordinance amendment, one of the things that it does is it seeks to move the footnotes from Section 15 back to footnotes, and legal department has told us that they should be called endnotes, so I guess they're endnotes and not footnotes. Also makes changes to our definition section of the zoning ordinance. Section 2, interpretations and definitions. There are a lot of terms that are used in the zoning ordinance that are not defined, and many times when something's not defined in the zoning ordinance, we have to go to Webster's, and it specifies a certain edition of Webster's, and so we have to go to Webster's. And it would be nice to have those things defined in our zoning ordinance. So we're adding a number of different definitions to the zoning ordinance. Another thing comes to us courtesy of the BZA. In Chart 1, self-service storage facilities are currently permitted by right only in the heavy industrial zoning district. And I think that's kind of a holdover from days gone by when the self-service storage facilities were, the metal buildings with that were people. There was kind of a stigma associated with self-service storage buildings, and what we do is we have made them by right in commercial highway and light industrial, which is they were only allowed by special use. They're currently only allowed by special use permit, and so Mr. Halliburton on our BZA, that was one of the things that he has stressed to us, is that there's no need to take those to the Board of Zoning Appeals when really they become very non-intrusive uses, and the architecture of those buildings has improved vastly over the years. But those are just a few of the amendments that are proposed. I'll be happy to answer any questions before or after the public hearing.
Okay. We'll open the public hearing for these recommendations on endnotes, specifically not footnotes, pertaining to our zoning ordinance. Anyone wishing to speak for or against, please come to the podium. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Consider for passage on first reading ordinance 17010, amending Murfreesboro City Code Appendix A zoning, Section 2, Section 15, Chart 1, Chart 2, Chart 1, and Chart 2 on the endnotes pertaining to revision of the zoning ordinance.
So moved.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright.
Ms. Scales Harris?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. And we'll go on record. I think there are certain things that carry along with people, like Miss McGannon always said annex. She didn't say annex, like a true Southern would say annex. So, Mr. Tyndall, it sounds like endnotes will now follow you around for your time in the city.
Proud of that.
Consider recommendations of the Fire and Rescue Chief, purchase of an AED cardiac monitors from a single source provider with CIP funds. Chief Oaks.
Mayor and Council, we're recommending to purchase 8 automated external defibrillators and cardiac monitors. This is in alignment with going to advanced life support services by July the 1st as part of our enhanced medical response that we initiated last year. These cardiac monitors would be for use on our advanced life support engine companies and ladder companies, as well as we include the future purchase of additional 8 of the other ones to be placed on the other apparatus that we have. But these advanced life support cardiac monitors would be critical for our paramedics to be able to perform all the advanced skills that they are able to perform. But additionally, they'd be able to be utilized by our advanced EMTs as a basic defibrillator, as well as several other uses for that to get us to the ALS level of service. The reason we're going with the sole source is we are heavily invested both from our records management system and our emergency patient care reporting with Zoll Corporation. They provide a very substantial cardiac monitor that interfaces directly with those 2 pieces of software that would benefit us enormously. We do have bids included in the package off of the national purchasing price list. Zoll Corporation actually gave us discounts for the volume purchase beyond those, reducing the cost of the monitors an additional $5,000 per monitor. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
There are no questions. I move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright.
Ms. Scales Harris?
Aye.
Mr. LaLance?
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet?
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman?
Aye.
Mr. Wade?
Aye.
Mayor McFarland?
Aye. I believe item B has been pulled off the agenda.
Yes.
Okay. Consider recommendations of the Assistant City Engineer design contract with Huddleston Steel Engineering for Warren Street extension and signalization.
Good evening, Mayor's member of the council. The Fire Station 4 project included the need to extend a city street. We've received a engineering proposal contract from Huddleston Steel Engineering to provide that design service. We propose to fund that design service out of the proceeds of the CIP loan for Fire Station 4, and recommend your approval of the design contract upon approval by the city attorney.
Any questions or comments?
So moved.
Second.
Mrs. Wright, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Thank you. Consider recommendations of the Assistant City Manager Construction contract with Boyce Ballard Construction for Computer Technology Center.
Mayor and Council, with your approval of some additional funding last week, we think we've completed the puzzle for construction of the Community Technology Center on the Hobgood campus. Back in the month of November, the low bidder was Boyce Ballard Construction Company at a price of $1,513,000. That was $313,000 higher than the budget that was originally prescribed for the project. Thanks again to the Christy Houston Foundation for their generosity on this project as they agreed to contribute another $200,000 with City Council's $200,000 match last week. We now have sufficient funds to complete the project in earnest. It's been a long path. We looked at a lot of different alternatives in terms of trying to get the cost of the project lower. Be glad to go deeper into those alternatives if anyone would care to. But your staff's recommending you approve this bid.
So,
Mr. Ballard has held his bid for 4.5 months, which is something quite unique in this time.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance.
Aye.
Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Special thank you to Christy Houston. Board and Commissioner appointments, you have the one that was sent to you last week. Appoint Mr. Michael Osborne to the Disciplinary Review Board.
move for approval.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright, will call the roll.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance. Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Any beer permits?
Yes, Mayor, we do have some tonight. 1 second. We have a new restaurant at 2222 Medical Center Parkway, Suite F. That location only likes for building codes inspections. Their background check does meet our requirements, so we would issue that permit once they finish those inspections, if approved tonight. We have 2 convenience stores, one at 302 West Northfield Boulevard and one at 2374 Old Fort Parkway. Those applications have met our background checks for the both locations. They do need to finish their building and codes inspections, so if approved, we would issue that permit once those are complete. We have a convenience store, actually 2 by the same owner again, at 3401 Memorial and one at 2610 South Church Street. Those locations have met our background check requirements and still like their building codes inspections, and would issue that permit if approved tonight once those are complete. And finally, we have a gas station convenience store at 1411 South Church Street that is changing owners and names. The background checks meet our requirements, and they also like their building codes inspections. So we do recommend approval on those. If they meet your okay, we will issue those permits once they pass their building codes inspections. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Ms. Wright.
Ms. Gels Harris.
Aye.
Mr. LaLance. Mr. Shacklet.
Aye.
Mr. Smotherman.
Aye.
Mr. Wade.
Aye.
Mayor McFarland.
Aye. Any statements?
Not tonight, Mayor.
I move we not pay any statement.
All right. I have one item for other business. I emailed out to you from Mr. Broughton where we had met on the city manager evaluation. I know for those of us who've gone through several, he had, in his memo, had really come up with some good suggestions. He's recommending that Mr. Lyons' annual evaluation cycle correspond with his appointment anniversary date as city manager. Accordingly, Mr. Lyons' performance review cycle will be conducted for each 12-month period ending August the 31st. And then later on it says, therefore, with that as a backdrop, the primary decision that the City Council will need to make is to whether, 1, to undertake a facilitated performance review to be coordinated by Mr. Broughton. He's going to help us with the first one. And then 2, the evaluation period for which it is recommended to end each August 31st. If the council agrees with that date, with a September 1st to August 31st period is recommended, then we will have several months before any action to commence the process to be required. If the council adopts to stick with our July 1st to June 30th evaluation cycle, then we'll need to start the process within 60 days. So really wanted to put that before the council to see how y'all wanted to do that.
Do we need motions for this, or just?
I think we probably would need a motion because we're going to be changing the dates that we normally go through. I mean, would we need a motion, Mr. Tyndall? Or just?
Well, I'm not sure how you adopted the process before. A motion wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, I think we did. It was before I was on council that it started. I know we've had a couple of changes to the process, so. I'll say I was really impressed with the workshop that we did. I thought I got a lot of good information out of it. So I think it was, for years, Ms. Scales Harris has made some comments about being able to rate on a way that we can effectively be able to have input on items that we actually observe. Mr. Lyons, I think it's a good start.
Should we talk about the two things separately, I guess is what one of the things I was asking about the motion, actually. I have like maybe one little comment about the date, but I would be comfortable with the facilitated. I think based on what you're saying, I felt the same way about his discussion that we had in the workshop. I don't really have any questions about whether or not we would undertake a facilitated performance review. My only kind of question was on the dates, which was, my only question was if we use the performance review as any sort of a standard, if we're going to connect that at all, which I'm not saying we have to. But yeah, if we connect it to the compensation, then the dates don't really line up very well. If we say,
I think from talking to him, what he had, if we do that as compensation, then it would be at the time of his review. Then anything that we decided to do would retroactively go back to the budget.
So we just don't necessarily do that during the budget time. We didn't do it last time either.
Yeah, it's
right?
done. It's done at that review.
So that would actually be good because it was ensured we'd get it done pretty soon after budget time too.
Yes, you're really talking 60 days after budget.
Okay. All right.
I like the September to August 31st cycle, so I move that we adopt that recommendation to do his review from the September 1st to August 31st, and to use Mr. Broughton.
I think that I personally would like for us to wait and do one of our 5 o'clock meetings on this topic and discuss it more fully. I enjoyed reading the letter and stuff, but I think there's some questions and concerns that I think that we need to debate and discuss, and I don't know that the system that we're currently doing is failing. I mean, it seems to work up until this point. When we contacted MTAS, I was hoping that MTAS would have something better than hiring the facilitator, which was the person who came to represent MTAS. Personally, I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with a former city manager being the person who's the facilitator, because I think there's a connectivity between him and city managers that, I guess we've got we've got one true city manager, but we've recently hired one from Columbia for the purchasing agent. And it just, I'm a little bit concerned that maybe we're getting too many city managers involved with our city and the process of trying to determine what Rob's pay is ultimately going to be. And so
I don't necessarily see that, because as the question to me is facilitating what our expectations are as far as his performance, not necessarily tying that directly to compensation. I see him more as a facilitator to gather information from us. His recommendation in the letter was to do interviews with us.
Yeah, I think the negative part of the way we've been doing it right now, to this point, and this is from being on both sides, being as a council member and now mayor, I do think the good thing about having MTAS as a third party, whether it be Mr. Broughton or whoever with MTAS, it takes the HR department out of it.
Yes.
So, right now, having the HR department try to facilitate the review of their boss is uncomfortable, to say the least.
Yeah.
So I think it does, having that third party.
We've been having some pretty regular.
I wouldn't mind. If we want to have a workshop on that, I don't mind. That's fine. That's fine.
For 5 o'clock. Can we put it on next week's
I
agenda?
withdraw my motion then.
Yeah.
That's
I didn't
fine.
even hear a motion, sorry.
We'll have to.
Didn't get a second.
We'll have to advertise.
I know how that feels.
We'll have to advertise, so we're probably a month from now that we can talk about it. Is that right?
Yeah, and we're getting ready to have to schedule the budget review sessions as well.
Okay.
So, and really, I guess since the date, is anybody real uncomfortable about the date part? Because if not, we're not in any big hurry anyway.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm not uncomfortable
Yeah,
with that.
That's fine.
Let's workshop it.
Okay.
Workshop.
Sounds great.
That's fine.
Okay. Can I bring up one other?
Sure.
Other business, and this is, I'll just make this a quickie, and I'll just get a yay or nay from you guys, but after looking at what got pulled off of the agenda tonight for the site work package, could, just an idea I'll throw out there, perhaps that piece of property that we've been back and forth on a whole lot, I think it's 7 or 8 acres right there. Would you guys be interested in at least looking at that? I mean, relative to the price that we're talking about the site work for our thing, that 7 acres may be in our budget, within our budget, the 7 acres that's right next to it.
We're developing that option. Yes, sir.
Can we look at, for us to buy it?
We've already had a meeting or two on it, yeah.
They're working on it. Huh. I'm like, they call that guy.
All right. That's a great idea.
You remember that?
Mr. Lance, that's a great idea.
Karnak. Yeah. Greg Karnak.
Yeah. Right.
All right. Any other, we do have tomorrow night, the Martin Luther King Scholarship Dinner is at the James Union Building tomorrow night. Excuse me. Yeah, the new Student Center, 7 o'clock. So, any other things wishing to come before the City Council? Seeing none, we'll stand adjourned.